I'm going to say something that sounds harsh, but it's absolutely true. Your silence is costing you thousands of dollars every single month, maybe tens of thousands, because every day you don't ask for that raise, you're accepting less money than you're worth. Every week you don't ask for that client meeting, you're losing potential revenue. Every month you don't ask for better terms, better opportunity, better conditions. You're leaving money on the table that other people are picking up. And the worst part is, you think you're being professional by staying quiet. You think you're being patient and mature by waiting your turn. You think good things come to those who wait. But that's a lie. That's a comfortable lie that keeps you broke while convincing you that you're noble. Good things come to those who ask. Great things come to those who ask repeatedly and strategically. And nothing comes to those who sit silently hoping the universe will reward their quietness. There's a person sitting at their desk right now doing excellent work, delivering results, exceeding expectations, and they're being paid 30% less than they're worth. There's someone else walking past an opportunity of a lifetime because they're too afraid to raise their hand and express interest. There's a talented individual with a brilliant idea that could change their industry. But that idea will die in silence because they won't pick up the phone and make the call. This happens every single day in every city, in every country, across every profession. And the tragedy isn't that opportunities don't exist. The tragedy is that people refuse to ask for them. Let me share something with you that changed my understanding of success completely after studying successful people for decades, interviewing thousands of high achievers and analyzing what separates those who win from those who don't. I discovered something remarkable. The difference wasn't intelligence, it wasn't education, it wasn't even hard work, though that matters enormously. The single biggest difference was this: successful people ask for what they want. Unsuccessful people don't. It's that simple and it's that profound. Successful people have developed the habit, the skill, and the courage to open their mouths and make requests. They ask for the sale. They ask for the promotion. They ask for help. They ask for introductions. They ask for opportunities. And because they ask, they receive. Because they don't stay silent, doors open for them that remain closed for everyone else. This is what I call the law of asking. And it operates with mathematical precision in your life, whether you believe in it or not. The law states this: if you don't ask, the answer is always no if you don't ask. You have a 0% chance of getting what you want. But if you do ask, your chances immediately jump to 50% or higher, depending on what you're asking for and how you ask for it. Think about those odds for a moment. You can guarantee failure by staying silent, or you can create possibility by speaking up. Yet most people choose silence. They choose certainty of nothing over the possibility of something, and then they wonder why their lives don't change. Now, why don't people ask? This is the question that matters. If asking is so powerful, if it's the key that unlocks so many doors, why do intelligent, capable people refuse to do it? The answer lies deep in our psychology, in our childhood conditioning, in the experiences that shaped how we see ourselves and our place in the world. From a very young age, most of us were taught not to ask for things. We were told that asking is selfish, that asking is rude, that asking makes you a burden, that good things come to those who wait, that if you're good enough, opportunities will find you. These beliefs were planted in our minds before we could think critically about them. And they've been growing like weeds ever since. Your parents meant well when they told you not to ask for too much. Your teachers were trying to maintain order when they discouraged you from speaking up. Your culture was attempting to promote humility when it suggested that asking for what you want is impolite. But the unintended consequence of all this conditioning is that you learn to suffer in silence. You learn to accept less than you deserve. You learn that your wants and needs don't matter as much as keeping the peace, maintaining harmony, and not making waves. And that learning is costing you everything. There's another reason people don't ask, and this one cuts even deeper. Many people genuinely believe they don't deserve what they want. They look at successful people and think those people have something special, some quality or advantage that makes them worthy of good things. Meanwhile, they see themselves as ordinary, as not quite good enough, as lacking whatever that special ingredient is. So they don't ask because deep down, they believe the answer should be no. They believe they haven't earned the right to make requests. They believe that asking for more when they already have something is greedy or ungrateful. This belief is poison. It keeps talented people trapped in mediocrity, while less capable people zoom past them simply because those people had the audacity to ask. Let me tell you about a man named Gerald. Gerald worked as an accountant at a medium-sized firm for 7 years. He was excellent at his job, consistently accurate, always meeting deadlines, respected by colleagues. But Gerald was also consistently overlooked for promotions. He watched as newer employees, some with less experience and weaker skills, moved up the ladder while he stayed in the same position year after year. Gerald became resentful. He complained to his wife, he vented to his friends, he spent enormous energy being frustrated about his situation. But he never did the one thing that could change it. He never asked for a promotion. Gerald had convinced himself that good work should speak for itself. He believed that if he just kept his head down and continued performing well, management would eventually notice and reward him. He was operating under the assumption that the world is fair, that merit is automatically recognized, that talent naturally rises to the top. But that's not how the world works. Managers are busy, they have dozens of employees and hundreds of responsibilities. They're not sitting around thinking about who deserves a promotion. They're thinking about their own problems, their own goals, their own pressures. Unless you bring yourself to their attention, unless you explicitly ask for what you want, you remain invisible one day. Gerald's wife asked him a question that changed his life. She said, "Have you ever actually asked for a promotion?" Gerald was stunned by the simplicity of the question. In 7 years. Through countless performance reviews and casual conversations with his boss, he had never once directly asked to be promoted. He had hinted, he had mentioned his interest in growth, he had expressed his commitment to the company, but he had never looked his boss in the eye and said, "I want to be promoted to senior accountant, and here's why I deserve it," the next week. Gerald requested a meeting with his supervisor. He prepared for this conversation like he was preparing for the most important presentation of his life. He documented his achievements over the past 7 years. He researched what senior accountants at other firms were doing and demonstrated that he was already performing at that level. He outlined specific ways he could add value in a senior role. And then he asked directly, clearly, and confidently for the promotion. His boss's response surprised him. The supervisor said, "Gerald, I had no idea you were interested in moving up. You never mentioned it. I actually thought you were content in your current role. Let me review what you've prepared, and we'll talk again next week." 2 weeks later, Gerald was promoted to senior accountant with a 23% salary increase. 23%. That's how much his silence had been costing him. That's the price he paid for not asking. But the story doesn't end there. Gerald's promotion was just the beginning. Once he experienced the power of asking in his career, he started applying it everywhere else. He asked his neighbor if they could carpool to save money on gas. The neighbor agreed, and they became close friends. He asked his doctor for a referral to a specialist about a health concern he'd been ignoring. That specialist caught an issue early that could have become serious. He asked his wife what she really wanted in their relationship. That conversation opened up communication they hadn't had in years. Within 12 months of learning to ask, Gerald's entire life had transformed. Same person, same talents, same circumstances. The only difference was he started opening his mouth and making requests. This is the power of asking. It costs you nothing. It requires no special skills. It doesn't demand resources or connections or advantages. All it requires is courage. the courage to risk hearing no, the courage to advocate for yourself, the courage to believe that your wants and needs matter. And when you develop that courage, when you make asking a habit rather than an exception, everything changes. Opportunities that were always there but invisible suddenly become visible. Doors that were closed begin to open. People who could help you but didn't know you needed help start offering assistance. Your entire reality shifts because you stopped waiting for permission and started asking for what you want. Now here's where most people get it wrong. They hear about the power of asking. They get motivated, they decide to start asking for what they want, and then they fail. They ask once or twice, they get rejected, and they conclude that asking doesn't work. But the problem isn't that asking doesn't work. The problem is they're asking incorrectly. There's a massive difference between effective asking and ineffective asking. There's a world of difference between requests that get results and requests that get ignored. And unless you understand these differences, you'll ask and ask and ask and wonder why nothing ever changes. Most people ask apologetically. They walk into their boss's office and say something like, "I'm sorry to bother you, and I know you're really busy, and this probably wasn't a good time, but I was wondering if maybe, possibly, you might consider perhaps giving me a small raise if it's not too much trouble." Listen to the energy in that request. Listen to the weakness. Listen to the lack of confidence. That person has already told their boss that they don't really deserve what they're asking for. They've already communicated that a rejection would be completely understandable. They've already given their boss an easy exit from the conversation. And then they're surprised when the answer is no. Effective asking requires confidence. Not arrogance, but confidence. Confidence comes from preparation. Confidence comes from knowing your value. Confidence comes from having a legitimate reason for your request. When you ask confidently, you're communicating something important. You believe you deserve what you're asking for, and you have solid reasons to support that belief. Your energy changes. Your posture changes. Your words change. Instead of apologizing and hedging, you state clearly and directly what you want and why it makes sense for both parties. Specificity is another element most people miss entirely. They make vague requests and expect specific results. Someone might say to their boss, "I'd like to advance in my career here." That's not a request. That's a general statement of desire. What does advancement mean? What position are you asking for? What timeline are you proposing? What are you willing to do to earn it? Without specificity, your request has no power. It gives the other person nothing concrete to respond to. They can easily say, "That's great, we'll keep that in mind," and nothing changes. Compare that vague request to this specific one. "I would like to be promoted to project manager by the end of this quarter. I've managed 3 successful projects this year that came in under budget and ahead of schedule. I've developed strong relationships with our key clients. I'm ready to take on the additional responsibilities of this role, and I believe I can increase our team's efficiency by at least 15%. Can we discuss what needs to happen for this promotion to become a reality?" See the difference? That's a specific request with supporting evidence, clear value proposition, and a direct question that requires a real answer. Timing matters enormously, and this is something hardly anyone considers. You can make the perfect request to the perfect person, but if you ask at the wrong time, you'll get rejected. Asking your boss for a raise the day after the company announced budget cuts is terrible timing. Asking your spouse for a major favor when they're stressed about a deadline is terrible timing. Asking someone for help when they're dealing with a personal crisis is terrible timing. Effective asking requires awareness of context. You need to understand what's happening in the other person's world. You need to choose moments when they're receptive, when they have the mental and emotional capacity to seriously consider your request. Here's another critical element that separates successful asking from unsuccessful asking: value exchange. Too many people approach asking as one-sided. They focus entirely on what they want without considering what the other person gets. But the most effective requests are those that create value for both parties. When you ask your boss for a promotion, You're not just asking them to give you something. You're proposing that you take on more responsibility, solve bigger problems, and create more value for the company. When you ask someone to invest in your business, you're not just asking for money. You're offering them an opportunity to participate in something profitable. When you frame your requests around mutual benefit, your success rate skyrockets. Let me tell you about a woman named Denise. Denise worked in marketing for a technology company for 5 years. She was talented, creative, and hardworking. She consistently generated campaigns that performed well. But she was stuck at the same level while watching people with less experience and fewer results get promoted around her for years. Denise complained about this. She told her friends the company didn't value her. She believed she was being overlooked because of bias or politics or favoritism. She considered quitting and starting over somewhere else. Then Denise attended a professional development seminar where the speaker talked about the power of asking. Something clicked for her. She realized she had never actually made a formal case for her promotion. She had never presented evidence of her value. She had never asked specifically for what she wanted. She had assumed her work should speak for itself. But in a company of 200 employees, her work was just one small piece of a much larger picture. Denise decided to change her approach completely. She spent 2 weeks preparing for a conversation with her boss. She compiled data on every campaign she'd managed over the past 3 years. She calculated the return on investment for each one. She documented specific instances where her ideas had been adopted company-widely. She researched industry standards for marketing managers and found she was already performing many of those responsibilities without the title or compensation. She prepared a written proposal outlining exactly what she was asking for, why she deserved it, and how the company would benefit from promoting her. Then she requested a formal meeting with her supervisor. Not a casual hallway conversation, not a quick chat during a break, a scheduled, dedicated meeting where she would have her boss's full attention. She walked into that meeting prepared, confident, and specific. She presented her case methodically. She showed the numbers. She demonstrated her impact. She outlined her vision for what she could accomplish in an expanded role. And then she asked directly, based on this evidence and my proven track record, I'm requesting a promotion to marketing manager with a salary increase to $75,000. What would need to happen for you to approve this? Her boss was impressed, not just by Denise's performance, which he already knew was strong, but by the professionalism and thoroughness of her presentation. He told her he needed to discuss it with the executive team, but he personally supported her request. 3 weeks later, Denise was promoted to marketing manager with a salary of $72,000. Not quite the $75,000 she asked for, but a significant increase nonetheless. The promotion itself was valuable, but what Denise learned was even more valuable. She learned that asking effectively requires preparation. You can't just walk in and demand things. You need to build your case. You need evidence. You need to make it easy for the other person to say yes by showing them exactly why your request makes sense. She learned that timing matters. She scheduled her request during a quarter when the company had exceeded its revenue goals, not during a difficult period. She learned that specificity gives power to your request. She didn't ask to be valued more or to advance her career. She asked for a specific title and a specific salary, most importantly. Denise learned that confidence comes from competence. She wasn't confident because she was naturally bold or fearless. She was confident because she had done the work to deserve what she was asking for. And she had the evidence to prove it. That's real confidence. That's the kind of confidence that makes people take your requests seriously. After her promotions, Denise started applying these principles everywhere. She asked a senior marketing director from another company to mentor her, and that person agreed. She asked to speak at an industry conference, and she was accepted. She asked 3 colleagues to collaborate on a new initiative, and they all said yes. Within a year, her career trajectory had completely changed. Same person, same industry, same city. The only difference was she learned how to ask effectively. The asking itself isn't complicated. What makes it powerful is the preparation, the specificity, the timing, the confidence, and the value exchange. When you combine these elements, your requests become compelling. They become difficult to refuse. They create opportunities that simply didn't exist before you open your mouth. And the beautiful part is these are all skills you can develop. You don't need special talents. You don't need connections or advantages. You just need to learn the mechanics of effective asking and then practice until it becomes natural. The biggest obstacle between you and everything you want isn't lack of opportunity. It's your fear of rejection. This fear is so powerful, so deeply rooted in human psychology, that it stops more people from achieving their goals than any external barrier ever could. People would rather guarantee they get nothing by staying silent than risk the emotional discomfort of hearing someone say no. Think about how irrational that is. You're choosing certain failure to avoid possible failure. You're accepting zero chance of success to protect yourself from temporary disappointment. But here's what you need to understand about rejection. It's information, not condemnation. When someone says no to your request, they're not rejecting you as a person. They're simply saying that particular request doesn't work for them at this particular time under these particular circumstances. That's it. Nothing more. They're not declaring you worthless. They're not confirming your deepest fears about yourself. They're just saying no to one specific thing. And that no often comes with valuable information about what might get a yes. Successful people understand that asking is a numbers game. They know that not every request will be approved. They expect rejection as a normal part of the process. If you ask 10 people for something, you might get 3 yeses, 4 maybes, and 3 nos. Those 3 yeses can change your life, but you only get them by being willing to hear the 3 nos. Most people stop after the first rejection. They ask once, hear no, and conclude that asking doesn't work. They personalize the rejection, they make it mean something about their value as a person, and they retreat back into silence. Let me tell you about a man named Kenneth. Kenneth had worked in the restaurant industry for 15 years. Starting as a dishwasher and working his way up to assistant manager, he had a dream of opening his own restaurant. He had developed recipes, he had identified the perfect location, he had created detailed business plans, but he had no money. His savings account had $8,000 and he needed at least $150,000 to get started. Kenneth knew he needed investors, but the thought of asking people for money terrified him. He imagined walking into meetings and being laughed at. He pictured successful business people dismissing his ideas as naive. He feared being told he wasn't good enough, smart enough, or experienced enough to run his own restaurant. These fears kept him stuck for 2 years. He refined his business plan over and over. He saved every dollar he could, but he didn't ask anyone for investment because he couldn't handle the possibility of rejection. Finally, Kenneth's wife gave him an ultimatum. She said, "Either start asking for help or stop talking about this dream. I can't watch you torture yourself anymore." That conversation forced Kenneth to face his fear. He made a list of 20 potential investors, people with money who might be interested in the restaurant business. He prepared his presentation, and then he started making calls. The first person said no immediately. The second person agreed to meet but ultimately declined. The third never returned his calls. The fourth said the timing wasn't right. The fifth said restaurants were too risky. The sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th all said no for various reasons. Kenneth was devastated. 10 rejections felt like proof that his dream was impossible. He wanted to quit. He wanted to accept that some people are meant to be employees forever. But something inside him refused to give up. He called the 11th person on his list. That person listened to his presentation and asked thoughtful questions. At the end of the meeting, the investor said, "I like your passion and your plan. I'm willing to invest $75,000 if you can find someone else to match it." Kenneth was shocked. After 10 consecutive rejections, he had finally gotten a yes. Kenneth's success with that investor taught him something profound about asking. Every no brings you mathematically closer to yes. He went back to his list with renewed confidence. The 12th person he approached also said yes, matching the $75,000 investment. Within 6 weeks of starting his asking campaign, Kenneth had the funding he needed. His restaurant opened 9 months later and became profitable within the first year. Today, he owns 3 locations and employs 42 people. But the most valuable lesson Kenneth learned wasn't about getting investment. It was about making asking a lifestyle. He realized that his entire life had been limited by his unwillingness to make requests. He had accepted whatever was offered instead of asking for what he wanted. He had waited for opportunities instead of creating them through strategic asking. Once he broke through his fear of rejection, everything changed. Asking isn't something you do occasionally when you desperately need something. Asking is a daily practice that compounds over time. Every single day presents dozens of opportunities to ask for what you want. Small asks that seem insignificant in the moment create massive results over months and years. Ask for a better table at a restaurant. Ask for a discount on a purchase. Ask someone you admire for 15 minutes of their time. Ask a colleague for feedback on your work. Ask your spouse what would make them feel more loved. Ask your children what they need from you. Each small ask builds your confidence and your skill. The compound effect of daily asking is extraordinary. When you ask your way through life instead of accepting your way through life, you create opportunities that didn't exist before. You build relationships that wouldn't have formed. You gain knowledge you wouldn't have accessed. You save money you would have spent. You earn income you would have missed. You develop skills you wouldn't have learned, all because you opened your mouth and made requests. Here's the ultimate truth about asking that I want you to understand completely. The answer is already no if you don't ask. You already have rejection guaranteed through your silence. The worst possible outcome of asking is that you end up exactly where you started, with a no. But the best possible outcome is that your entire life changes because someone said yes. Those aren't equal risks. One keeps you stuck forever. The other creates unlimited possibility. Stop waiting for permission. Stop hoping someone will notice you and offer you what you deserve. Stop believing that good things come to those who wait. Good things come to those who ask. Great things come to those who ask persistently, specifically and strategically. Your dreams are waiting on the other side of requests you haven't made yet. Your ideal life exists in conversations you've been too afraid to start. Everything you want is available, but you have to ask for it. The life you want is waiting. All you have to do is open your mouth and ask. Because if you don't ask, you don't get. It's that simple, it's that powerful, it's that true.